Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Gyhaffin with Keoma. I am excited today, really and truly excited, because we have no other than one of St. Martin's very own, or should I say, like a political legend, MP Sarah Wescot-Williams. MP, I will just give you the floor to say a little bit about yourself before I dive right in.
Hello and greetings. Greetings to you, of course, and greetings to all tuned into your program. Thank you for having me. And again, it's a pleasure to be able to talk to you, to talk to our audience. And of course, this is a very special week. It's a week that started with International Women's Day. So I am honored to be able to have this little chat with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, pleasure. So when I did a broadcast, I told one of my friends we actually would do media together in the US. So that's Tan TV Adedea in Washington D.C. So I told her, hey, like my next guest will be one of St. Martin's former prime minister, actually the very first prime minister. She was like, what? You hit, like, this is a big one. This is what you need to do. You need to do this. And in that moment, it dawned upon me. And I'm like, you know what? In the bigger countries, we see our former prime ministers or a member of parliament or politicians as these major figures, you know? And here in the smaller islands, I think that the level of familiarity, what do you think, do you believe because of our small community, the value of the leaders of a country is looked at in a lesser way?
I don't think the value is. Yes, there is this more familiar type of interaction also with the leaders, which is sometimes a good and enjoyable thing. What I believe that, and that might have an effect on what the way you put it, is that maybe overall speaking, we should at different times maintain a certain level of decorum. I remember my mother saying to me, she said, never be ashamed of how you speak. And I love to speak St.Maarten English. And that's me. But I also should be able to speak properly in the right setting, so the different levels of decorum, and sometimes that is being breached, not necessarily towards like former politicians or so, but generally speaking, I think, we can up our actions where that is concerned.
Very, let me, I am there thinking also, if we as a community, right? If we as a community, that's just Sarah, that's just Sarah, that's just Silveria, that's just Rolando. Is it that familiarity that makes us feel like, okay, they're just the person next door? Whereas if it was Barack Obama in Washington, D.C., the reaction would be totally different.
Yeah, it is true. It has a lot to do, of course, with our size. There is nothing necessarily wrong with that, but it all must be put in the proper context. I feel very comfortable being known, generally speaking. And I'll tell you when something like that comes in handy. I did a while ago. I was in Marigot during a scene, during a protest, during a burning, and some of the persons who were actually involved in the protest, and they were like, but that's Sarah. So from that perspective, that respect was there. You know, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's a good thing they recognized me, because this could have been a kind of it was a dangerous situation, you know. So it has its good sides and its bad sides, but I think because respect and respect for those in authority should be something that we all practice. That we are small, we are in a small community, we get along well. That's okay, but it's okay for certain occasions. You know, you can have a big formal thing going on, and I walk in, or the Prime Minister walk in as Prime Minister, and it's hi Silveria, you know. And so I think everything in it should be put in the right perspective.
Well said, and I do agree with that. But MP Wescott, the reason why I really wanted you here today is to discuss women, the history of women, the journey of women, and the journey of you being the figure you hold, the figure you are in our environment, in our local community, regional, and the world. You have been in the political arena for so many years. How many years exact?
30 years this year. 30
oh my
years.
Lord.
Yes. The first time that I actually ran for political office the first time in 1990, and I held office the first time in 1991. So, and since that time, I have held different political offices. So it's like 30 years of doing this.
So what caused you? What came to you that said, you know what? I want to say politician, but I would like to be an influence, a positive influence in my community. And the arena for me is the political arena. What was that budding? What was that budding that caused that?
You know, I can only put it to having been a civil servant. Having been a civil servant, and in that setting, and again looking at it back then, it's where the community and their politicians, their civil servants were very close, and I just love being able to help persons, knowing the government. Generally, persons are not, and especially back then, to a certain extent still now, do not know about the government operations. And sometimes that bureaucracy can get to people. So kind of bridging that, I enjoyed, and that also put me very close to politics. Again, because of the small nature, you know, so you're there, you're working for the government, but the government is run by politicians. And then it was nearly not a natural, I can't say a natural step, because it's not everyone who is a civil servant will eventually go into politics. But for me, it was kind of a natural step.
What was your childhood like? I would like myself and our viewers to know what was your journey like?
Wow.
What was your childhood like that led you right up to politics?
Yeah. Oh, wow. You know, there of course, as with most of us, there are things that from your childhood that stick with you. And for me, let me dispel a generally held conception that I was born on Aruba. There's nothing being born on Aruba, nothing wrong with being born on Aruba, but I was not. I was born on St.Maarten. My mom hailed from Anguilla. What I loved about my mom's story of her early days on St.Maarten was that she came from Anguilla in seek of employment in the not prosperous but better off St.Maarten at the time, ended up in Simpson Bay, where she met my father, and then who eventually traveled back to Anguilla, and that's how that became. Eventually they got married, but I was born on French St.Maarten, and not because My mom lived there, but my mom worked on both sides of the island. My mom was, and I can say housekeeper, make it sound good. My mom was a maid. My mom worked as a maid all her life in homes and eventually in schools and in hotels here on St. Maarten. So she was traversing the island, and I was born in the hospital in Marigot. My father died when I was very young. I guess the memories that I do have of him are more what I was told than what I remember. I was just too young to remember. One of the things that again stuck with me is that my mom told me that when my father was ill, and the nurses at the time would come from Phillipsburg to Simpson Bay to look after him. And one of them once said to my mom in coming to look after my father, and I was very, very young, a toddler actually, carrying on a conversation. And the nurse said, the sister we used to call him at the time, said to my mom, she should be in school. And then my mom arranged for me to go to school, you know, because I guess I was talking a lot. And but before I was even 4 years, my mom, following the death of my father, my mom went to Aruba because she was looking for a better life. She was looking for a livelihood, and she went to Aruba. We stayed back here, and again, another part that I remember is the fact that Hurricane Donna in 1960, and of course the stories getting to my mother on Aruba at that time. And remember, you're talking 1960, so it wasn't like, you know, you could send a quick WhatsApp in terms of what's happening here. You could see the Weather Channel, and no. So I guess the stories and the images that my mother got were like, you know, oh no, I need to get my children here with me, better here with me to you know, I don't want to sit to suck salt, but better here with me. And then, you know, up there, and I don't know exactly what's happening to them. We were at that time with our aunt in Concordia. God bless her, she's still alive, Tantan Beryl. And you know, but anyhow, so we all went to Aruba eventually as best as we could, and that's where I grew up. That's where I went to school. And one of the things, again, that I remember very vividly is my mother constantly, you know, as I said, she was a maid, and she worked and she ironed for persons. And I remember my sister and I having to take the ironed clothes, you know, and that back then. I remember my mother actually ironing with what they call a goose iron. And making the
iron?
I think that's what they call it. No, they call it a goose. They actually call that iron. I think that you put gas in that big heavy thing. Yep, yeah.
Where you put it on the stove?
No, I think you could have put gas in it. It had a little, yes. And I remember her ironing with that and making the starch. And then my sister and I would then have to take these clothes to the persons for whom they were ironed. So she had her own little personal sort of a laundromat service, but it was basically ironing for other people. And I remember her constantly like, you know, I need to get back home. I need to get back to St. Maarten, and she would not learn the language of Aruba, and you know, and I remember those tough days and those hard working days, and I like, you know, wow, and my mother was all about, you know, your education. She was all about education and looking for, you know, for a better life for us, an easier life, if I can say that, than she had. And eventually, after living some time on Curacao, I returned to St. Maarten.
Where growing up, what was your aspiration? So many of us grew up and say, when I get older, I would like to be a teacher, a soldier, a police officer. What was your childhood aspiration?
A teacher, actually a teacher, you know. Yeah, I wanted to teach, you know, and there was on, I don't know, Keoma, if you are familiar with Aruba, but
No, never
there are
gone.
two, okay, there are two main cities, towns, if you wish, and one is San Nicolas and the other one is Oranjestad. We lived in San Nicolas. Now my, if I have tried to count the many places where we have lived on Aruba, because my mother was renting, and if the person needed their home, you know, we had to move again. And so we lived at many locations in St. Nicholas, and I went to school there. And the secondary school at the time, called HBS, was in Oranjestad, in the town. They would call Oranjestad the town. And but you needed to be transported to get there, and you needed to pay for transportation. And my mom could not pay for transportation for me to go there. So I just went what was then Mulo, and then became Mavo, in San Nicolas itself, the John Wesley College, as it was called. And but the thing was that because my mother at the time, she used to clean the school where I used to go. And I would go with her and then assist the teachers to train those students, my peers, my friends, who would have gone to the town to go to the HBS, you know? And all of those things, yeah, you know, so I look back, and I believe that type of a struggle, if you wish. I mean, my mother shielded us from it, but you know, as you grow older, you realize how difficult it must have been for her to kind of keep it all together, you know. And but I do think that has made me a very strong person, in terms of strong and understanding, you know, and what many mothers and single parents go through, sometimes to my detriment, because I tend to take on these things, you know, as if they're my own burden. But just understanding, you know, what people can go through, what some of us can go through, and until today go through, right here, you know, around us in our communities.
You mentioned you returned to St. Maarten, and you started working at the government, at the government. At which point, I'm hearing myself. Can you hear me? Am I echoing? Can our
I'm not
viewers
hearing
hear
you.
me echoing? Okay. Let me just make sure everything is done here. Okay. Before I continue, MP Wescott, let me apologize to our viewers. Let me say how we do Gyhaffin. Gyhaffin is basically engagement with the guests as well as the viewers. So we have a tendency of always highlighting our viewers, let them know we know they're here. So just for a few seconds, let me just highlight who we have here so far. We have Nicole DeWeaver. She said, "Good afternoon, Keoma
Hi,
and MP
Nicole.
Wescott." Adedea Fashino, Adedea and I work together in Washington, D.C. in media. We do coverage for the United
Oh,
Nations General
nice.
Assembly. Adedea says, "Oh, sending love, so excited to watch this. Great job, Keoma." There are persons, Facebook users, say, "Good program." Hi, Fran, how are you? Good afternoon, Keoma and Honourable Wescott. Great memories. Nicole DeWeaver says, "Thank you for being such an inspiration."
Oh, thank you, Nicole.
And she also says, "Yes, we are hearing you too." She said, "Yes, she's hearing me twice." Okay, maybe it's my phone. I'll just double check, Nicole. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you
There's
guys
some
for
another
tuning in,
comment.
and thank you for the words.
Thank you so much too. Jay Harvey says yes, a small echoing. So I'll just have to double check it. I have to
Yeah,
be my
let's,
own
yeah.
technician while I'm live. We have a friend of mine who helps me behind the scenes, Joelle. So let me shout out Joelle. But MP Westcott, you mentioned you left Aruba, you returned to St. Maarten, and you started working at the government. At which point in time did you say, hey, you know what? It's time for me to join a political party. What was that
Yeah.
specific moment like for you?
You know, the party at that time, the party, the person, the party, the politician at that time was the late Dr. Claude Watty. Okay, so that's the environment. And so for an election, I'm now talking like 1980s, I joined a party. But when I say I joined a party, let me state that back then, the party was not this kind of official association. I remember working on making the party a foundation, which was a great step back then. But what I did like was the campaigning. And the late Dr. Claude Watty had a very particular way about him. And what was the big thing of campaigning in those days? Those were the public rallies. Okay, you could not imagine a campaign without public rallies. In fact, in years later, during later years, we as a political party were saying, it's very tiring during a campaign, every night, every other night, going out for a public rally. But we actually had to develop a strategy. How do we tell Middle Region that this campaign, we're not having a public meeting in their district, So the big thing for campaigns at that time was public rallies. And I remember we were in a public rally in Cold Bay. And I was sitting on a little rock wall, and we were having fun, of course, and listening to the jokes, because that was what it was about in those days. The politicians go up there and it's a jab at this one, a little jab at that one, but much more good humored than today. Not the kind of viciousness. Yeah, you had the, so. And I'm sitting there, and then I guess Claude at the time ran out of speakers, didn't know who else to call up, and he probably had spoken. And then he was like, and the next person on the podium is going to be Sarah Williams. And I like, there must be a next Sarah sitting somewhere here, because impossible this man without any kind of notice would, but as he called me and I realized there was no other Sarah, he was actually referring to me, I went on stage. And I think that going on stage and addressing the people and feeling that adrenaline, and kind of having been at it ever since. And still enjoying that part, still enjoying, getting passionate about items relating to St. Maarten. Still feeling goosebumps when the St. Maarten anthem is played. So yeah.
Our viewer Arlena Richardson asked, was the DP the first party you ran with?
Yes, it was. And the following year, Arlene, I ran with PDP. And there is something that I need to explain here. Because when I ran with the DP in 1990, an unknown young person, and I ran number 5. And I got 400 and something votes. And everybody was like, wow. But then I changed alliances, and I ran with the PDP, and I ran, I think, number 3, and I got 100 and something votes. And that told me one time that persons not only look at the politician, but also the party with which he or she runs. So yes, DP, and then the second year. And remember, there was, at that time, we had elections every 4 years, yes, but you had elections for the federal and the local government. So I ran an election in 1990, 1991, 94, 95, 98, 99, 203, and so until we got to the election for 10-10-10. So I was kind of accustomed already to this back-to-back election, like sometimes we're having even now every year, every other year and a half.
Before 10-10-10, what was the governing structure like? I know we were a part of the Netherlands Antilles, but what was that like? And with you being a woman, because it's Women History Month, so we definitely want to touch base on that. But you being a woman in that arena at that time, with such powerful men like Dr. Shoutouts, what was it like for you? What was the ambience like?
We had a system of Island Council and Executive Council. The Island Council was our parliament, and the Executive Council was our government, call it the Council of Ministers. But there were huge differences. The Executive Council was nowhere close to the Council of Ministers in terms of its structure, and we had a dualistic system. So you were at the same time, you could have been at the same time a member of the executive branch. So you could have been a commissioner and Island Council member. So I have served in that dual role for many years. And we didn't have a prime minister. We had given a name to the person leading the government at the time, and that was the leader of government. That was not official. It was no legal title, but that was the person in charge of the other commissioners, so to speak. And so the change in terms of understanding and kind of rolling with it has been huge. Has been huge. Getting to understand the parliamentary system, now the real true parliamentary system. I think we're still in that process of getting to understand. And with respect to the other part of the question, I don't dwell too much on, whoa, I'm a woman in here and all of these men around me. I just, if you're fighting, I'm going to put up a fight with you. If you're not fighting, so I just kind of like, I didn't see myself, because of being a woman, any weaker, this thing about being a weaker sex, I didn't see that at all. Huh? I'm in this position and I go make sure that I'm good at what I do. And if you challenge me, you're going to have to come good. That was my thing. I honestly, and other than that, I really didn't experience an issue such as that. Yeah, you have situations where especially back in those days, the male politicians, they had a different way of meeting, of speaking, but don't worry, especially behind closed doors. I mean, I could give you a run for your money in that respect as well, huh? So if you want, I of course, and again, coming back even to the very beginning of the program, Keoma, but you got to know where and how. I wouldn't belittle myself and lower myself, and definitely not, outside there to prove what point. So I felt kind of comfortable doing what I did, knowing that I gave it my all. I gave it my all. I made sure that I knew what I was talking about, that I prepared for every encounter. So, yeah. So I wish I had a story to, those guys, but I don't have.
Because in our modern day reality, this environment, we talk a lot about gender equality, about women being the lesser, and the issues women face. Was it on Tuesday? We actually did an episode of Gyhaffin with gender-based violence and economic violence, and it was a quite interesting conversation. So given the fact that was about 15, 20 years earlier, I was just curious to understand if there were any differences, discrimination then. Okay, you know what, you're a woman, you have to follow us, or did you? But then again, too, you mentioned Dr. Shoutouts, he called you on stage. So that means he saw you as an equal, he saw you as capable.
Yeah, and it also meant, Keoma, and now if I look at it, especially in the political environment, the way that we campaign and the verbal fights, verbal political fights that you would have, especially in the earlier years, and there were no holds barred, in politics. There were no holds barred. So I mean, you could get somebody going up on a public stage and pulling you and your family, your brother, your sister, I mean, through the mud. And many women who I have known and who I have been in touch with regarding joining the political arena, they were like, I surely would like to be at some point, maybe a commissioner. I'm talking back then. But that kind of treatment, if you wish, for the lack of a better word, I can't take that. I can't go through this campaign. I can't have somebody up there on stage and I mean calling me every possible name in the book, and then tomorrow they look at me, they laugh, they say it was not personal. You know, it's difficult for women to go through that. You're gonna hear your stories, and you're going to hear things that people make up on you all there on the. Now it's a total different thing with technology. I think it's, but back then it was just our little local community. Hi Bernadine, thank you for tuning in.
Bernadine, hi, thank you for being here. Miss Pratt, I always say Miss Pratt, Arlene, I'll read your question just now. Let me ask you at that before sentence then. I really want to dissect and understand before the transition to country status, right? Mm-hmm. What was that told? Because you just mentioned during the political campaigns, your names will be there, they'll drag your family in the dirt. You have a family of your own.
Yeah.
What was the impact? Because you have a public life and a personal life. What was the impact all of that took on your family? Mm-hmm. I mean, your children were going to school, so I can only imagine the names they would call and stuff like that.
Yeah. I want to tell myself, I always tell myself, I raise them independent, to be independent. Now, whether that was a conscious act of mine or they had to, out of necessity, be very independent, but there also was another factor, and that was my late husband, and that father figure there, not only for the children, but also for me, in terms of being there and doing filling the gap for some of the things that I should have been doing for the family. Because we could say that we're everything for everybody, but fact is that 100% is 100%. There's no 110%. 100%, that's all, that's the total, that's the sum. And so you can't give 100% both ways. I'll not say which of my, hi Curtis, I'll not say which of the children, which of my children, but I'll tell you, as Commissioner of Education, I had this thing with me, and when you have graduations, you're invited to these graduations. Yes. Now, I felt it my responsibility to go to as many schools as I can. And, my staff, the people around me would say, but, tell them you're going to send somebody. And but I want to give them the message myself. I want them to see me. I want to tell these children, And so it was one of those days, graduation time, and I'm at the graduation of, I'll not even say a son or a daughter. I'll just say of a child of mine. And I looked at my watch and I was at my child's graduation. And I said, something, I can make it to another school and quickly show my face and get back here. What happened in the meantime was that the child was expected to take a rose to their mom. And when my child came out, I wasn't there. And tears came down the child's face, you know, but that hurt me so much. That hurt me so much, you know, and but it just goes to show. And so, those moments, no, I could never forget something like that, you know, and you could never really make up for it. That's a moment that you can't fix again. And you know, so when you ask about them, and so you also had these type of things. And imagine after all of those years, my children big, I have college age grandchildren, and it still touches me when I talk about it.
So basically, in that essence, in that moment, it was the balance between your private family
exactly.
life.
That's the point I wanted
life.
to make. Yes.
So you basically have to. So for persons who decide to take the public role, okay, I need to put this down. 1 minute. I believe it's here. Okay. Is it better? Maybe. Can you hear me? I'm not hearing an echo. But I think persons can hear me, right? Okay, let us see. So I believe in that moment is where an experience of balancing public life and private and family life.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of persons, including myself, we want today to be leaders, we want to be entrepreneurs, and we want to be this figure, or even just a family person, just a woman in her home, or a father in her home, in his home. And it's so important, it's so necessary for us to understand that balance and to know where our barriers lie. And I know you would agree. What would you say to the mother right now who is in a public office or who is balancing 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet? What would you say to that woman, or even to the father? When do we draw that line in terms of work and family?
Yeah, you know, I believe in doing your job and doing it good. On the other hand, I, after a while, maybe too late, started to tell myself, you know, as much as persons tell you what a great job you're doing, how much you're needed, and you know, you're not indispensable in that job. You're not the only one. The next person mightn't be able to do it just like you, do all that you do, but you know, so I mean, you really have to finish something before you go to sleep and get that rest that your body needs. And as I'm telling you this, I started to tell myself that, but at the kind of late, you know, after having gone through, as I remarked on Monday, and to the current prime minister, gone through that kind of a pressure cooker, politically speaking, you know, because in the system that we're in now, as a member of government, as a minister, you constantly got to take into consideration what the politicians around you and your circles and your peers, you know, what they are doing and what they think, because your fate, FATE, as a minister, depends on persons around you, you know. So so in terms of realize that you're not indispensable. Though that don't mean sit back and say, well, if I don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. No, not to that extent, you know, but realize that you can't give 2 times 100% or double 100%. It's you're one person, you can only give 100%. So seek that balance, and the balance changes. When your children are growing up, they're young, they need you much more. Older, they do need you, they need your guidance, but it's not like the everyday 24/7 like they would when they were younger. So the minute you move to that other stage, you can rebalance. facts. And I believe there are different stages. You got to be able to understand those stages in your life and act and rebalance accordingly.
We're now to the point where we're preparing for 10-10-10, right? What was the atmosphere then around that whole preparation process for 10-10-10? What was that like? And what was your role in that process?
We need to understand 10-10-10, or the coming into being of 10-10-10 from the perspective of the referendum of not only 2000, we need to understand it in the context of the referendum of 1994. I have always been, from a very young politician, of the firm opinion that we should govern ourselves. Okay, so St. Maarten needs its own government. We shouldn't have a government in Willemstad deciding for us what happens to our taxes in Philipsburg. Okay, so I was always so you had that, and it was not only me, other persons felt the same way. So you had that drive to become separate from the Netherlands Antilles, to become a country. And so 1994, 1994 followed some issues with higher supervision and whatever have you. Anyhow, the federal government, so the Antillean government, decided to have a referendum in 1994. So I went out there and I campaigned for a separate status. We want to go away. We want to get away from Curacao, so to speak, but get away from the central government. But the people voted to remain in the Netherlands Antilles. So I had to accept that. That's what the people wanted. Sarah's opinion alone should not change the whole. So anyhow, but things started on a political level. Things started to unravel. We had a hurricane in 1995, and you had the central government, and it had to do with size as well. Their focus was Curacao, etc. Long and short, we had another referendum organized by St. Maarten, because we're like, okay, we're going to organize a referendum here because the people must by now understand that it's better to have these powers here in Philipsburg than the powers for Philipsburg in Willemstad. So we had a referendum in 2000, and 69.9% of the people who voted to become a separate country within the Dutch kingdom. And that for me was the moment to put everything I could put into achieving country status. So from 2000 until 2000, I can say 2010. However, I need to say that the last year, 2009, 2010, I was in opposition. But from 2000 to 2009, negotiations, travel throughout the Dutch kingdom, going, reading, preparing, you name it. Is what had taken. So that was my role for 9 years long. For me, the focus was getting the people of St. Maarten what they voted for. And why I single out again 2009, 2010, which would have been the last year, I was still involved, but in the opposition in the island council.
Mm-hmm.
So it was rough. It was rough in those years working for country status for St. Maarten. And I must say that it wasn't a big team around me, but a team just as committed to the goal as I was. And I don't want to call names because I might forget somebody. I'll still try. I want to mention Joan de Valle Mate. I want to mention our current our current governor. I want to mention our former lieutenant governor, our current governor Holiday, our former lieutenant governor. In fact, both former lieutenant governors, Richardson and Richardson, by the way, the late Louis Dusanson, you know, I mean, and many, many more that, you know, and I mean, we went at it. Regard, you could, Keoma, check whatever kind of chronicles you want to check.
Yeah.
And wherever you look, you will see regarding that period of time, St. Maarten had a small but a passionate team of persons working for to obtain and attain country status.
What was that fight like? I mean, I understand what the fight was like for St. Maarten, for that small passionate team, but here it is now. You're going to the kingdom and you're telling them, listen, this is what we want.
Yeah.
What was their reaction like?
Yeah, you know, and that is when things like my proficiency in the Dutch language, for example, not only to talk and hold conversation, but also to dissect any document in Dutch of any amount of pages, to talk to those, especially of the Netherlands, on their level, you know, to be. I mean, I walk the streets, and some of the others that I mentioned, the streets of The Hague. I mean, all hours of the night, getting in on the KLM of 7 o'clock in the morning and going to a meeting for 10 o'clock. You know, and yeah, that's what it, to make sure that you don't miss out on anything, to make sure that nobody fills in that part for us.
Okay, there's a question I hope I don't forget to ask, but Miss
I see your question, Arlene, and I'll get to it.
Okay. So Miss Sprott, I have to get, for our viewers, you may be wondering why I'm saying Miss Sprott. Arlene Richardson is Miss Sprott. She was my history teacher in high school. So the student and the teacher is still in me. It's still in me. So that respect is still there. You see, I forgot in all of that, all of those years, MP Wescot-Williams, how did you care for yourself? You just mentioned you get up of KLM at 7 a.m., you're at a meeting for 10. In all of that rigorous times, how did you care for yourself personally? Because at the end of the day, you have the responsibility of country, but you still are a human being and you still have the responsibility of self. How did you manage your personal self and your personal sanity?
Yeah. Back then in those particular years, not as well as I should have. Not as well as I should have. Subsequently, yeah. But only following some events that I realized, you know, I couldn't continue like that. And as I said, the kind of rebalancing, you know, okay, yeah. So, but not as well as I tried, you know, and I thought then at the time that I was doing a good job, because of course, you know, I'm doing all of this and look at me and I'm up and I'm here in the meeting and I'm alert and but looking back, I would say not as well as I should have. I want to address Arlene's question now, and because it's important in the context of the human resources, because remember, our governmental system changed as well. So we had persons on St. Maarten working for the central government, and we had persons working for the island government. We had to combine that structure. And the new apparatus with now ministries, rather than the departments that we knew in the island territory days. And to answer the question again, provide training where that was necessary. So we had some experience in most of the areas, but not sufficient. We had to provide training, you know, in order for persons now to be able to function in that new environment. The whole exercise to bring those two apparatuses together was quite an intense exercise, redeveloping the organization for country St. Maarten was quite an extensive and tedious process, having to place the persons now in the function in the new system. But there was a training program that was part of this whole redevelopment of the government administration. The only area where that was not the case, where we had absolutely no preparation for in terms of running a ministry, is the Ministry of Justice. The Ministry of Justice. But other than that, you could have transported the persons and the human resources. It was not an easy task, and you constantly had the issue of, okay, if I'm taking 1 or 2 or 3 small numbers of persons and sending them out to do internships, and so what happens then to the job that they're doing? So that constant trying to place, and at the same time trying to train rather, and at the same time have the administration running was not easy.
The next question Arlene asked, let me see. This is the next question. She said, we had 9 years to develop the people.
Yeah. It's a reference to her, it's in reference to her question where she asks, how did we do it? And then she was looking at the 9 years in terms of preparation.
Okay, do I see anything else? Fran Constantine says, so true, very, very difficult to balance. Great advice. Energy Evans say, very good advice, thank you. Arma Gums is
thank you,
here.
Pat.
So now we 10-10-10. There was the election where St. Maarten would have had its very first prime minister. What was the campaign? What was the conversation actually like? Because now it's a totally different status. Now you're quote unquote, you're running your own show here. You're running your own show. It's new, it's exciting. What was the adrenaline you felt in that time? What was the essence of achievement you felt in those moments after acquiring the status?
I think my feelings are best expressed the moment that that night, so from the 9th to the 10th of October 10, and the lowering of the flag. And why I'm pointing like in the back of me, because here in the Parliament building, we're next door to the courthouse, and that's where it happened. And that for me was, was priceless. That was priceless. I mean, this is that changed. So the final change, the final act to basically bring in country St. Maarten, that will remain with me forever.
What do you think? You're in a leadership position, but what do you think the importance of that movement, that new status is for persons? What was some of the reception you received from the community? And again, to me, in looking at the history behind certain events, kind of give you a feeling. Why did I refer to the referendum of 1994 and the one of 2000 earlier? Because the hurricane and the fact that, to me then, especially after Hurricane Louise, is when the people of St. Maarten realized there are decisions that can be made for us that are not taken in Philipsburg. For example, an increase in taxes, which was the purview of the federal government, and that took place like right after the hurricane. That was the infamous, rather, turnover tax. And so what it brought with it is that the people of St. Maarten could have held, still can hold, their directly elected representatives responsible for what they do and how they do it. That's basically
the main change. No one used to direct our economy, for example, for us. And that happened here. That happened here, the government and the business sector, etc. But to hold your government responsible, whether we're succeeding at that, I think the jury is still pretty much on how it is that the people of St. Maarten can hold the government accountable for what they do and how they do it. And then why I say the jury is still out, because then you get the discussion about, you can change them in 4 years, and then you talk about the politics and the elections. But that was the main thing, because now the government, there was a government in Phillipsburg before 10-10-10, but they did not have all of the competencies that govern the country. So sometimes they could hide behind, we can't change this. It's the central government that did it. It's not, it's not our purview. So basically then St. Maarten became responsible for St. Maarten.
Since from 10-10-10 to now, do you think first of all, we as a government, we have lost our focus? Because there was an intention as to why we wanted to acquire that separate status. But do you think we have lost our focus, our intent?
One of our biggest issues has been the issue of instability. Instability in government. Instability comes about because, this discussion can take different directions, because some would say, but if you had mature politicians, you wouldn't have to worry that we operate in a system where one person with one act can change the whole government. So with the best intentions, with the best program for the people with the best program for the people to judge you by within 4 years. I mean, since when have the people of St. Maarten have the opportunity to, one, receive a 4-year program with clear outlines of its government, of its governance, to be able then at the end of that trajectory to judge their government? We have had elections. The only 4-year term that did not see an election up until now is the one that I held as Prime Minister from 2010 to 2014. Since then, so of course, we had an election in 2014, we had one in 2016, 2018, and 2020 last year. So it makes governing extremely difficult, coupled with the fact that you could have a coalition formation that do not necessarily see eye to eye on everything, not putting it in a program for the people to understand, well, this is where this coalition wants to take us or not. And so instability, you talk, Keoma, about losing the focus, but I think instability is an issue. Is an issue in terms of the governance, in terms of being able to accomplish. And at first, the people of St. Maarten should be told, this is our governing program. This is where, we want to go with you. You can agree or disagree, but it is the prerogative of the government of the day to decide this is where we want to take the people. If at the end of that trajectory, the people do not agree, then it should show in the outcome and results of an election. Arlene asks, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to mention Arlene's question in terms of the turnover tax was meant to be temporary. Right? Is it still in place? And it's a fact, when the central government introduced turnover tax, it was supposed to be to assist the finances of the central government at the time, and the island government, the then island government took it over and continues with it because that is considered one of the revenues of government. And until it changes, for which there have been many voices going up in terms of including mine, let's look at our tax system, let's change. Persons have been talking about moving from direct to indirect taxation, dealing with the whole issue of income tax and profit tax. But that change has not yet been effected. So in the meantime, that post of turnover tax remains a very important source of revenue for the government.
You've been in the political arena for 30 years. You witness, you are a part of your experience, you witness the transition from that initial intent, that vigor you first had, like, oh my God, I want to do this. And to witness and to experience what the transition has been like. Do you ever at some time, I know you're a human being, do you ever at some time say, you know what the hell, I had enough of this? Do you ever feel like the intent is not there, and that passion you had and the hope, that the vision you saw, it's crippling, and you feel like, you know what, it makes no sense? Have you ever felt that?
And the thing is, yes, and the thing is, never in that kind of a thoughtful way like you explain it. But I have had moments when, depending on something happening, I would like, I done, but yeah, I mean, like really at a certain time that used to be a joke, because the those around me who would hear that I done would like the next day say, but I thought you were done, but I do especially now I feel a disappointment, and at the same time needing to know I'm going to say something now and say that for the lack of a better word, needing to know that it's not, I need to know my place, and understand that this is the system of 15 members of parliament elected by the people, of which I am one. Some of them form a coalition, all again part of our democratic system, and the coalition is responsible for the government that governs our country. So sometimes I feel not only a disappointment, but I feel like, oh my God, where are we going? Last night I was communicating with a journalist on this matter that is very current now in terms of decolonization and the petition filed in Washington, et cetera. And I had to basically end up saying to the person, I'm sorry for kind of having lost it, but it really upset me in that particular case to see that something so fundamental could have taken place without being sufficiently thought out in terms of what it does to our country. So a feeling of disappointment. And I guess because I don't want to say the power, but I don't have the clout. I don't have the clout to change some of the things that I believe need to be changed.
So Nicole the Weaver says, so true, instability is definitely the real issue. Thank you for asking that question, Keoma. Very important and imperative discussion. What keeps you going in all of this? What
so
makes
much.
you get up every single day and say, hey, you know what? It's another day, and we'll do this. It's 30 years. It's 30 years. Aren't you bored?
Absolutely not. My fear is to become bored.
Your fear is to become bored?
Yeah, I don't want to become bored. That's exact. So no, I'm not. No, this This keeps me going. Let me put it a different way, Keoma.
Mm.
This basically keeps me going. I have to be going. I have to be challenged. I have to, you know, so yeah, but I too have my moments. I too have the mornings, you know, and I like, wow. And then you look at some things that take place and affect St.Maarten, and you're like, should I go after this again? Should I go complaining again? Should I ask about the casino that going in Colby again? You know, I mean, and you know, so but and that's my role, that's my responsibility. But I constantly gotta be, okay, do I just let this go? And I said to in the program that we had on Monday, I really truly try to practice the serenity prayer. I honestly try. I like, okay, you know, why are you going to try to do something, to change something, to make something happen that you know you can't? And so I try to separate my issues. I try to, again, it's not a complete correct comparison, but I try to choose my battles, you know. But also as part of the serenity prayer, those things that I believe need to be done, I want to constantly have the vigor to put my heart into it and get it done.
I have to give it to you. I have to give it to you and to everyone who is 30 years and you still have that interest, that fight in you. You know, I listen to Parliament meeting. Honestly, sometimes I have to zone out of it. But I do listen from time to time, and I can hear, you know, the hammering. And it's not just a hammering as to pound, but the passion in wanting things to be better and wanting things to be done properly. So for our viewers who are watching, not only females, not only our women, as it's Women History Month, but even to the male, what would be your advice as to remain passionate? Like, what should we do regardless of what we're doing? You're in the political arena. You know, I am in the media communication. There are persons who are in the kitchen. They're working in the hospitality field. There are persons who are in healthcare. We all at some point in time get frustrated, like, oh my God, I don't want to do this anymore. What advice would you give to persons like myself to keep going, even when there are times it feels like I don't want to go anymore?
You know, Keoma, the under normal circumstances, my answer to that question would have been, make sure you're doing something that you like to do. You know, make sure you're doing something that you like to do. Why did I put a caveat to that statement and said under normal circumstances? Because I know right now too many of our people have to do things out of necessity and not because they like to. So given that fact, I am saying, you know, at the end of the day, it's about you. It's about you. And even in the most stressful situation, try to find that time for yourself. I woke up this morning and with a lot of things on my mind, including this whole matter on the decolonization and the petition. And although I didn't really feel up to it, I said, you know, this calls for a little jog, a little walk. It's only going to be 10 minutes. I ended up 40 minutes out in nature, out, you know, going over the causeway. And that for me, that brings me peace. That brings me reflection. That makes me say, when I look around and then I coming back up and I look up at the hill and I'm like, this is my country, you know? So going at it again. And so, you know, find those moments. You must. It doesn't have to be a half an hour, 40 minutes. Find that 5 minutes, you know, and especially women, I say to them, I say to us, you know, and remember yourself, remember your health, remember your well-being. And Lord God knows, I know how difficult some of our women and mothers are having it today. And I feel it. I feel for them. But remember, you are a person. Remember, on St.Maarten, there are ways and means for you to be helped. Seek out those ways when things look really desperate. And if you can find that little moment for self-reflection, that little moment for, reinforcing that inner strength, do it. And find a way to, to whatever makes you relax, whatever makes you rethink, whatever gives you that boost, do it. Do it for your own well-being and those around you.
Question. This is off the top of my head. Do you mentor? Because we as young women in a community, we look for patterns in leadership, and we always turn to the internet. We always trying to see what the celebrities are doing, or what this other person in this other part of the world is doing. When in our own environment, we have so many strong women, so many strong figures. But do you? I know you're active with Zumba, but have you ever done mentoring where you bring women together, young women with organizations, and say, you know what, let's mentor?
Keona, I do that, but on a very individual basis right now, not having. Preparing for 10-10-10. I and others, someone in the Netherlands, someone on Aruba, Curacao, etc., started a mentoring program, which I instituted and made part of the government organization. That died away, but it did start, and I did have women in the community who took a young person as their mentee. And I think we should have that. I know some organizations have it. I mean, I know some men organizations have it for young boys, but I think I was also reading while I was answering Corinne. But yeah, so but I think much more can be done in terms of that mentoring.
That I agree with you. I believe there are mentorship programs. But from my experience personally, I think sitting and speaking to someone is one thing, but some of us we all learn in different ways. For myself, I need to be there and do the practical work. I can listen, but I need to be a part of the conversation. I need to be, okay, this is how you do it, step 1, step 2, until I get that. So definitely for women who are watching, I believe this is what we need. We can talk and say, yeah, do this, do that, but we need to be able to speak. Our younger persons, or even our persons our own age, your age too. How do we do this? And whatever we know, we just spend some time. But then again, time in itself takes time. It takes time to find time. And let's just be realistic, because we all have our own, busy days as well. Another one of my high school teachers, Ms. Van Putten, Corinne said, I have often felt and said that our political leaders have no vision. One reason for my feeling is that leaders like yourself don't offer, in bracket, that I know of, our young people the opportunity to be their counterpart in an effort to make sure your legacy is preserved and their work is continued. What are you doing to make sure your legacy is preserved so that our young people today know who you are and what you stood for? Wow, what a question.
Yeah. And quite a mouthful, Corinne. And I want to take it from the bottom up. I mean, you are right in terms of letting people know who I am, and in the future who I was and what I stood for. I mean, you're going to have to chronicle it. And many persons have asked me, have you written a book? Are you planning to write a book? Are you planning to write a biography? I and others on my behalf have made attempts in the past, but that has never happened. The other part of the question, politically speaking, Corinne, because that's my forte, and I have created not only what we in political terms know to be the youth wing of a party, but also created a system where young professionals totally not knowing the political arena, but with the intention at some point, maybe in the future, wanting to become engaged, and created that platform of training as well. However, you need to realize that in politics especially, that situation is very fluid. So somebody, and I've seen them even in that platform that I speak of, the so-called CPYP, you know, the chapter for professional young persons, but it was also political education, government system, and all of those things that many people are totally unaware of how it works and how it functions. But in politics, there's nothing that binds someone to that, or to you for that matter. The person can choose at the end of the day to say, well, you know, we think you're a great person, and thank you for being able to be in your circle, see what you do, how you do, ask you questions. But at the end of the day, that person can make a choice that totally is not you. It could be another political party, it could be another politician.
Ms. Van Putten, Corrine, let us know if you're satisfied with MP Wescot-Williams' response. We would love to hear.
Unless Corrine wants me to take her under my arm, which I would love to do, not take you under my arm in terms of getting you prepared for some intentions that you might have. You never know.
Oh, that would be something, because she has a mouth on her. Ooh,
I know,
she has
right?
a mouth on her. And one question. If you were to, I wrote this down, if you were to critique yourself over the past 10 years, since 10, what would your criticism be, your self-criticism be?
You know, I do that a lot. I do in terms of, you know, self-critique, because I think it's important. I do it to myself and for myself. I have a few of them. I think wanting to think often that, you know, leave situations, don't get in situations, they will eventually solve themselves, and having to realize sometimes that does not happen, and because I let it go, you understand, it got further than it should have, and that it should have gotten. I think I sometimes am too susceptible to the needs of others, and sometimes that can be taken advantage of, you know. And so I have those little things that really I tell myself, you know, this, no, nothing major, like, you know, but definitely some areas that I know, some of my weak areas, which I have, you know, and there are a few of them. Those two being only two.
Can you repeat that, please? Because sometimes when we see persons like yourself, figures, we think, okay, we have this perception, oh, we know you're not perfect. But can you just repeat what you just stated, just for the record?
Yeah. In terms of my weak areas, and I have my weak areas, and I could think of quite some of them. I think of them often, and tell myself, you know, change, but it's kind of like it's you, and you really need to make a conscious effort when you recognize this is a weakness, this is a critique of you upon you. So oh no, for sure.
So just to add to that, and I'm speaking to our viewers, so you see, self-critique is necessary, and self-honesty is also necessary. And I believe, and would you agree with me, it's a process, because a lot of times we're not even conscious as to what we're really doing. So it takes a level of consciousness to even realize, hey, I mess up.
Definitely, you know, and that's why that kind of reflection. I mean, I took a course because of this in mindfulness, because you really got to sit back and reflect and think about yourself and look at how you handle the particular situation. Yeah, professional critiquing yourself is very important. You got to be able to do that, but also taking time up for the less obvious things, like you mentioned. That's also important. An important part of self-critique and self-examination.
I agree with that, but it definitely takes a lot of maturity to accept you're wrong, or
Oh,
to
for sure.
criticize yourself, and not to beat yourself up either.
It
To
has
say,
to be, it
listen,
has to be up, it has to be done consciously, you know.
yeah.
You have to really, like, you know, I really need to sit down and see how I handle that situation. The whole of last week I was either this way or that way, but why, you know, why do I feel, and then of course you get into all of the things that you are taught in terms of, you know, empathy for the other, understanding why persons act in it, which is hard, huh? To say, well, okay, that person is acting or acting up, but let me try to understand him or her. All of those things, yeah, they're easy said. We know we should be doing it, but it is not that easily done.
I agree with you. I agree with you. It takes maturity. It actually takes maturity. How do you deal with backlashes?
Uh, um, you know, the um, it really depends on from whom, and to be honest, what kind of mood I'm in. Honestly, you know, really, because sometimes depending, you know, and I tell myself, okay, who is this coming from? And what are really their motives? Is it really you, or are they sort of, you know, trying to get some other frustration out? And you, and being a political figure, you're often the target, huh? Regardless to what. So I try to look at it in that way. But I too sometimes, you know, get off the handle. I mean, yeah.
But were there is it a normal thing for you where, or I'm pretty sure it happened before, where you got a backlash and it really hit you and puts you in a state of depression or sadness for some time? Did you ever experience
You know,
that?
I try for that not to be the case. Of
Mm.
course, there are some things, as you call it, the backlash, and you know that, that are hurtful. Yes, without a doubt. And but I try not to let it have that effect on me. Of course, you know, you can't, like I always say, you can't close off your mind. I can't say today, okay, mind, shut off on that item. That's not the way our body and mind work. But
Mm.
you got to try to do that. You got to try to understand what effect something is and can be having on you, and see how
Mm.
best to cope with
Mm.
it, you know.
For our viewers, you understand that? Did you get that? The way I'm not missing anything. The manner in which you cope is basically self-reflection, self-acceptance,
For
in
sure.
order to propel yourself forward. And also, I think we have to also look to see, is it really, like, as you mentioned, what effect would it going to have on me? Is it important? Is this about me? Because a lot of persons talk about us, but is it really about us, or they're just talking? So we really have to learn how to decipher, how to discern. So
Exactly.
anything else you want to add before I continue?
No, I think you have stated it well, Keoma, and again, it is not easy. You know, don't think that I am on the road in a car and I see drivers either stopping or doing whatever some of our drivers feel they are entitled to do, and just sit down and say,
Mhm,
well, you know, that person might be having a bad day. So
mhm,
just let me know. I do have the moments like I'm ready to kind of blow a fuse, but I need to realize what blowing a fuse will do, especially to myself. Especially
mhm.
to myself. So that kind of constant reflection, but it's not as if it's so easy, you know, that understand for the one who lashed out at you might
Mhm.
be having an issue. That might very well be the case. That doesn't make it easier for me to accept, but I got to understand that I need to put it in that context, reflect on it.
Let me ask a question that I haven't written. We are in the pandemic era. We are in the pandemic era, right? And there's so many persons who are out of work. Persons are frustrated. Before the pandemic hit, persons weren't even earning sufficiently. And now it's like triple whammy on them. What not as a political figure, not as a country leader figure, but as a human being, as a fellow person, sister, mother, friend. What encouragement, what advice would you give to us? I always have to include myself in the whole. What advice would you give to us?
Yeah, as we said before, it is not easy. The answers are not there for everyone. I have seen women have had to change their entire career, because of the pandemic. I have seen some very independent women who I have admired and needing to have to, go and seek assistance that under normal circumstances they would have never think of doing. So Keoma, I kind of still put that responsibility. So in that situation, I would say, we gotta keep the faith. It calls for some adjusting on all levels. I don't care what, who, or how. This has definitely called for adjusting. See how you can. That's one thing. And from a perspective of the position that I'm in, I'm constantly looking for ways to assist these persons, generally speaking, to offer them some kind of assistance where needed, guidance where needed. And I just want to briefly come back, because we talked earlier, and that was a very important point, about instability, and the changes in government. Faced with a situation similar to what we're in right now, the pandemic, lack of economic activity, lack of government finances, I was part of a government change following Hurricane Irma, for the simple reason that I saw no help for persons who found themselves much like in the situation that many persons find themselves today, and so I had to make a decision at that time. Do I swallow my pride as a politician for the greater good, to make sure that money is going to start to come into the country, and these are, so as a politician, as a leader, you need to look out for the kind of situations that we are encountering right now in our community as well.
I want to back up. I missed a point I should have brought from before. So you were our very first ever prime minister, and female prime minister as well. Can you tell us the whole scenario, the whole situation around that? I take us on that journey, because that's a big thing. It has been a big thing, and you basically you're in the history book. Everyone is, but you are in a history book as the very first prime minister of country St. Maarten. The prime minister is one aspect, and in the age of gender equality, it's a female. What was that like for you, and what does that mean to you?
As prime minister, many view that person as the one in charge of the others, the other ministers, the entire government apparatus, etc. But that kind of authority, so authority for the whole, is more a moral authority than it is there laid down. That, for example, like we have in other countries, a prime minister is responsible for the for the appointment of the other ministers, etc. But that's not our system. So in essence, except for like maybe chairing the council of ministers and those kind of things, the prime minister is actually another minister with the responsibility for his or her ministry. So the maneuvering in that political environment, I mean, you got to be tactful. You have to be tactful. And remember, at the same time, so in behind closed doors, you of course you you know you're frustrated, you're trying to keep to part fights, to keep ministers from going at each other. But then to the outside world, you are the face of your country.
Yeah.
So you can't take that outside. So maneuvering in that political environment is not easy, because remember, the government stands and falls on the basis of who are supporting them from within the parliament. There's a lot of political pressure that comes the way of especially the prime minister. And you still got to, and you can't lose your cool. You can't let down your people. You got to be the one of the, she was good represent. You know what I'm saying? So it's not easy. It's not easy because, again, the authority that you have is not like, okay, Minister of Justice, I'm asking you to do this. You think you should do it the way that you want, or that others are telling you to do it, so I'm going to get rid of you. No, that doesn't work. You got to deal with the Minister of Justice and the political backing that the Minister of Justice or the Minister of Romy, whoever minister has. Could be for your own party. It could also be from another party with a different political feeling and a different political agenda. So it's like a political minefield in there. If you want to keep your job, because your job depends on how happy or not those persons who support you in parliament are.
Can we separate the role of the prime minister? What was that title like for you? Being, how do you own that? I mean, is this something that is like wow? How do you own the title of being St. Maarten's very first prime minister? Your grandchildren will read that in the, well, they're already here. They're reading it already. Your great grandchildren, they'll be reading this in the history books. And you're here now, and we are conversing. What is the essence? Just the thought of it, the feel of it, the very first. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just saying it. What was that like for you?
It's a heavy weight, huh? It's a heavy weight. Remember, we didn't have a prime minister on St. Maarten before. I knew many prime ministers. I knew wonderful prime ministers, especially Antillean prime ministers, Antillean female prime ministers. I mean, we have had some very strong female prime ministers in the Netherlands, Antilles. But on that 10-10-10, you get that name. And it's like, whoa, now I got to live up to the expectations of a prime minister. Generally, you could follow the book, what you got to do, what's your responsibility, so you could go according to that. But towards the people, you need to maintain a certain image, you need to maintain a certain confidence, you need to maintain a certain positivity. I mean, if the prime minister is going to sit back and say, well, this is it, and you got to, and again, sometimes you got to swallow your pride and your personal feelings on something or about somebody for the greater good.
I personally know you've been very active in the community in terms of Zumba. Health, you've been for the I would say about almost 10 years, if so, if I have the correct. You've been very active with health, wellness, partnership. I can't do Zumba, and you master Zumba. I go out of context. I cannot move my body properly. I'm a right brainer, not a left brainer. So I am out of sync, and you master it. What propelled you to get into community good, into health and wellness, and to engage women and the community with you?
Being a avid reader, and we don't even have to be an avid reader to have understood and accepted that one of our major health issues is the issue of being active. That's one globally. And as a prime minister, as a female, cognizant of that fact. I like, oh my God, just like me, I would spend what, 10, 11, sometimes 12 hours in an office, mostly sitting, and like me, many other civil servants. I like, no, we're going to change this. And that's where that actually got started. So I say, something, ladies, on Friday afternoon, I, the Prime Minister, am going to allow you to leave work early, an hour early, but you're not going home. We are going to find a place to basically practice. And at the time, it was Zumba, being active via Zumba, because music, and it's not about no professional dancing. I mean, all I wanted everybody to do, all I still want everybody to do is move as best as you can. And like I tell them, crawl, walk, creep, or run, but please move. You got to move. You got to keep your body active. So what happened was that I didn't have a place to do that. So I said, okay, we're going to do it in the parking lot. So then we cordoned off an area, and that's where we started, and we called the group, You Too Can Move. So whoever, big, fat, small, old, young, but we need to move. We need to be active. And obesity is a issue. Sitting on its own, just sitting is an issue for our bodies. And that's where that actually started. Now it's much more fitness than only dance. It's not only dance. But Keoma, if you wish to, believe you me, it's not about whether you can dance. I think nowadays with dance, I mean, what you consider uncoordinated might look like a new dance. So
I've done, in 2014, my organization Gyhaffin Projects, we team up with RBT Bank, and we hosted You Too Can Dance, the Zumba event at Port de Plaisance. And I'm like, you know what? Let me try this. I went, and it was in the tennis court.
Yes, I remember. I was there.
Outcast, everyone was there, and I'm there like doing this thing. I'm like, you know what? Let me get off this. Let me get off of here before the camera hit me, and this is recorded, because I cannot take it back. So I find myself in the back, and I watch everyone.
I remember that event. I remember that event.
I just can't. But I really commend you for that, for understanding, not just understanding, but understanding and taking actions to the balance between the work-life balance, and not just going home and sitting, but to actually participate in an activity of mobility. And I'm sure you still do it up to today, do you?
Oh yes, up to yesterday.
Very good.
Yeah, and along with me, Keoma, and I think this might be a right time, because I have so many wonderful members, of You Too Can Move, and some of them just as maybe even more committed than I am. They're day after day, and we have young girls, and it's really, and for me, that gathering too is a gathering in which I can be myself. So for me, it's more than just the movement. It's also being able to get together with the other participants and spend the hour and work ourselves, work out. Yeah.
My last few questions. What has been one of the most memorable moments for you as a woman in politics?
The swearing in, my swearing in as Prime Minister of country St.Maarten. I don't think there was. I have had many huge political victories. I have had huge political defeats as well. But I think that particular moment, given also the circumstances, no one thought that I would have been the first Prime Minister. Many persons felt it should have happened, but did not expect it to. So I think that was definitely a memorable moment.
What was that moment like for your family as well. I can only imagine.
It's sort of, remember, it was like totally new, a very proud moment without a doubt, but like, okay, what does this really mean, And with that, and not only that, with my with politics in general, your family, your direct family, whether they want to or not, are also and sometimes unnecessarily put in the spotlight as well. And that's
Yeah.
a less liked part of it.
What is leadership to you? What is leadership? Not just country level leadership, but just leadership in general.
I have pondered about that question because it always come at me. And I think that the best way for me is by example. I know it sounds cliche, leadership by example. I once had that as a political slogan, but honestly, you can't be preaching one thing and doing another thing also as a leader. So I really think, albeit it's simple and it's cliche, that's what I did. I believe in my own education and encourage others to believe in theirs as well. Don't no halfways. You got a job, you do it good. What you don't know, try to learn, try to understand, be ahead of the pack, and yeah, though you can't talk your way out of situations all the time. So I honestly believe it really comes down to showing that leadership, to proving that leadership.
A question just popped up in my head while I listened to you respond. Now we have in government, we have a balance of the more mature leaders who are there for 30 years like yourself and more years, and now we have the younger politicians now. Do you feel like, okay, you know what, my time is up because the younger persons are coming in and they have this millennial mindset? How do you offset that feeling? Do you feel challenged, or do you feel as though you have a sense of responsibility to teach and to guide because you were there for so many years?
Teaching and guiding in the political field is very difficult. Okay, you don't. I mean, that really doesn't exist. Let us be honest. Across party lines, for sure. Across party lines. Okay, within my own circles, for sure. Within my own circles, yes. The more general part, I think it's a matter of evolution. You know what I'm saying? And I'm glad to see that in politics as well. And I need to understand my role in there. It is not taking anyone else's role, but as long as I hold this office, I have my own responsibilities. Yeah. But the learning, and many persons ask me that, but it's difficult across party lines. If I had to get up there or say it or publicly or otherwise, guys, I think I can teach you guys something. I mean, they will look at me like, yeah, you serious? Some prefer to learn by trial and error. It's so again, within my own followers, so to speak, yes, for sure. But it's across party lines is not a realistic concept.
That is very clearly understood, and I can definitely understand that also, and I believe our viewers can too. My last question, I don't know how this will be for you. Are there any leaders within our local political parties you admire?
Am I putting you on the spot? Did I put you on the spot? No, absolutely not. You put me not on the spot, but you really put me to think. I don't know, and this mightn't sound nice, but I don't know if it's admiration. In fact, I admire persons being in politics, period, because I know what it takes to be in politics, you know? And I feel that albeit that we go about it in different ways, I want to hope and believe that, you know, it's all for St. Maarten. Sometimes I see and hear things from some politicians that make me think, oh no, that's not all about St. Maarten. But generally speaking, again, and so I don't know if I admire, but I respect persons in politics because I know what it takes. I know what it does to you. I know the toll it can take on you and your family. So I respect them. Yeah. I know that doesn't sound, but
No,
that's
it's
the
honest.
truth,
It's
you
honest.
know. Yeah,
It is
that's
honest.
the truth.
It is honest, and that's what I appreciate. Just the raw honesty, and no one can take that away from you. It is honest, and that's what it is. In closing, anything else you would like to add? Anything else to me, to our viewers?
You know, I want to answer your question with Corinne's statement a little while ago, and that has to do
Okay.
with the amount of time that you have spent with me on this program and asked the kind of questions to in terms of getting to know me. So I want to thank you for that. But I also think that this is one way of responding to Corinne's question in terms of what do you do in order for people or persons to know who you are? So, especially in today's world of technology, this is a way. So, I hope that is what has happened. That is what persons have derived from the program. You know, just understanding and knowing. And then, Keoma, I think this would actually be sort of wrapping it up. On Monday, the organization PWR. TALEM and USM, PWR of Miss Eve Badijo. They had an event for Women's Day and they honored me as with the Living Legend Award. And you know, they by naming that, it was a surprise to me when I learned that that's what they decided to do. But I want to thank them, of course. I was honored by it, but they make me think about legend and being legendary. And I'm like, now again, I'm telling myself, and I want to tell others. So that is not only about, oh, what I achieved. She was once prime minister of country St. Maarten. But more than that is the whole trajectory. So my defeats and my triumphs and my failures and my, you know, everything together would make someone, in my opinion, a legend. So it's not like, oh, that pedestral kind of a holding up, but rather realizing that, you know, for you to become good or be good at something, you got to keep at it. And so that would be my I hope that my story here with you would inspire that kind of thinking, and not because maybe in your whatever your course and your direction is, you know, that you falter, you stop, you become discouraged, doesn't mean that you should pick it up again if that's what you want to remain doing and that's your passion. And realize that yeah, you can boast of experiences, but experiences usually come also with a lot of lessons as well as sacrifices. And I guess that with those closing words, I miss Keona. She has, I don't know if we have been disconnected, but in any case, my show still seems to be, or the show still seems to be live. So to make sure that a good leave is taken, I want to again thank everyone. And I think maybe Keona's connection was lost. So thank all of you who tuned in, and hope to see you soon on another program having another discussion. Thank you, and have a good evening.